Started here. My name is Addie. For those of you who don't know me, I am the Leadership Development Coordinator for the Bend Chamber. Today we have a really exciting, well, hopefully it's exciting to all of you. We're going to get some tech help, and I know I have needed it in my house. We're really excited. We're going to be talking with Doug Cox from BendTel. Just an extra shout out to BendTel. They're amazing partners of the Chamber. They sponsor our new member Mondays, and those are really fun videos that they've been doing for us. We're gonna throw that in the chat a little bit later if you want to see those. And they sponsor ribbon cuttings, and they just have been amazing with us as we've been flexing and pivoting for how we've been having to change things with this new reality we're all dealing with. So we're really thankful for BendTel. Thank you. So Doug Cox is with us today. We've got Harrison Womack with new Fathom as well, and Jordan Smith with Velox, and they're going to be answering a lot of great questions for us. We're going to do a few short presentations from them in the beginning to set the groundwork for today, and then we'll have lots of time for Q&A to hopefully help you guys with some specific tech issues you may be having. So, oh yeah, so if you can see, Leela just put some BendTel information in the chat for you. So go ahead and check that out when you get a chance. All right, so we're going to get started, and I'm going to introduce Doug for you. Doug Cox.
Well, thank you. No, and thanks everybody for joining this afternoon. Hope everybody's getting a chance to enjoy some of the recent sunshine as we've kind of shifting gears into spring. And I know it's difficult to get out as much as we'd like to, but hopefully folks are still getting a chance to get out and play a little bit. But no, thanks for the introduction. And no, BendTel is really appreciative of the partnership with the Chamber and being a local business phone and internet provider. The relationship with the Chamber has really lent its hand, as most of us can imagine. But would like to start things off and just explain kind of the landscape in Central Oregon from an internet perspective, and knowing a bit about it as I've worked for I worked for Bend Broadband for roughly 8 years, and then I've been with BendTel, fortunately enough, now for the last 5. So knowing a little bit about the landscape and the island that Bend kind of sits on. And I'll kind of paint the bigger picture of how the internet works. Some of you may or may not know, but obviously BendTel doesn't have fiber, or Bend Broadband for that matter, or CenturyLink have fiber built all throughout the United States or all throughout the world. So what does that mean? Well, think of it as this transit system, kind of like rail lines of a railroad, if you will. You have these hubs where people are moved and transported from one city to another. Well, and then you have, your local transit system, what we call the last mile. BendTel, Bend Broadband, we're last mile providers throughout Bend and Central Oregon. So who is our Amtrak that gets us, out of town, or gets us to Portland, gets us to Seattle? Well, we all use tier 1 carriers. There's big names in that, probably not familiar with most. Hurricane Electric, Zayo, CenturyLink even has some, LS Networks, among many, many others. So in that, there's only a handful of tier 1 carriers that come into the Central Oregon market. Well, we're reliant on them to move our data to the rest of the world. And largely where the internet connectivity goes back to our peering points in Portland and Seattle, where folks like CenturyLink, Bend Broadband, BendTel, there's these carrier hotels, they call it, these peering points, where we meet other carriers. We meet other folks like Netflix, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. And these are ones in Seattle, ones in Portland, the Westin and the Six. And the reason there are these meet-me points, or these hubs, if you will, is for low latency. Well, what does that mean? That means faster connectivity to Microsoft, faster connectivity to Netflix. So your user experience um, is a better experience in that case. So we try to have, you know, low latency connectivity to these particular areas to move data traffic. So when you look back at Bend and what I mean by being on this island, we're not like Portland where Portland has, you know, probably 20 plus, 30 plus tier one carriers that go into that market. In Bend, I think we have somewhere between 6 and 7. Um, and when you look at the Tri-County area of 275 plus thousand people, that's really not a lot as far as tier one carriers and being able to move traffic in and out of Central Oregon. Those are kind of our shortfalls in where we're at from an internet perspective. So what does that mean now down to you as, you know, the home user, or even now as, you know, with the pandemic that we're faced to work from home? What is it as far as internet connectivity that you're going to need to support not only your work from home environment, but as we all know, like myself, I have children at home that are homeschooled now too, and it's remote connectivity with Ben Lapine School District. So it's not just one user on the internet connection at home. I have 4 in my case. So what kind of bandwidth do I need or will you need to support your current setting with your business, you know, with your homeschooling environment as well? I'm sure as we've all faced and seen, there's times, you know, we get the wheel, it's buffering, right? It's loading, the videos are loading. Well, the important question to ask is do I have the right amount of bandwidth or a large enough internet connection to support what I'm doing at home in today's current setting? That's the first question you're going to need to ask yourself. You know, I know in my particular household, we have 100x5 connection, which seems to work 90% of the time. There are other peak hours of usage, you know, that we're seeing in this market right now. It used to be from 6 o'clock at night till 10 in the evening. Well, now we're seeing it from 10 in the morning, peak usage until about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I think we know the reasons why. So if the simple diagnosis in this is if you're finding that you're having internet connectivity issues, meaning videos are trying to load, or, you know, this web conference is dropping and coming back online, chances are you don't have enough bandwidth. And you possibly need to upgrade. I know we're all in different settings, so I can't give a recommendation based on one user, the amount of bandwidth that you need. It kind of depends on where you're at geographically. Because I know where I live on the south end of town, I don't have the ability to get a gig connection there. So the 100 is the most that's available to me. And I think we're all kind of in those different settings. The next key ingredient in looking at is your wireless device. Is it set to 2.4 gigahertz, which is, it's a 2.4, it'll support a further broadcast range, but at slower speeds. You're gonna have trouble streaming video if your wireless device is set to 2.4 gigahertz. You know, then there's 5.0 gigahertz. That's going to be faster data. It's going to move faster. Video is going to work easier. You're going to move data quicker, but it's only going to work in a shorter range. So again, you're going to, this is where consulting with your IT consultant is going to come into play. And I'll get there here in just a moment. You know, the other question that has come up with us is as folks, and Harrison and Jordan will attest to this too, as a number of business customers, they have servers that are at remote locations or even at their main offices. You need to make sure that there's adequate bandwidth there as well, because you're more than likely you're trying to VPN in to a server, or you're trying to remote desktop, which requires bandwidth at that location as well too. Adequate enough amount of bandwidth and dependent on the number of users. We just had an architecture firm call in here late Friday, and they needed to up their fiber connectivity, the bandwidth, because they had 20 plus associates that are trying to remote into servers or remote desktop, and they were having limitations at the business premise. So keep that in mind as well. And lastly, I can't emphasize this enough, and having a IT consultant in support of either your remote application or remote setting that you guys are in is critical. Much like being under your business roof or umbrella, as if you were back in a normal business setting. Most businesses, they have IT consultants that they work with. So in your remote setups as well, it's critical to have that IT support, because an internet provider, we only go so far, and most internet providers will only go so far. Ben Broadband, they hand you the internet connection. Here's your wireless device. Have a great day. We're much the same. CenturyLink's the same. So that's where your IT consultant comes into play, to make sure that you have VPN access, you have the right tools and applications for remote desktop, and so forth. So mission critical that you don't forget about the IT consultant. They're the ones that are going to be there to support you and make sure that you're able to operate efficiently. But thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Doug. We will bring Harrison on next. Harrison?
Hey. Well, once again, thank you guys all for joining us. And this is exciting for me. I just, both Jordan and myself, we're like those IT guys, and we work with businesses directly, but we're also really excited to help you guys as personal workers who are now having to work remotely. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about some of the commenting on what Doug said, and I'm setting my timer so I don't go over. But I want to talk a little bit about some things that Doug said, and then talk about how you can securely work from home and what you should be looking out for. So first, I wanted to just share my screen and show you guys how to test if you have what your internet connection speed is, because sometimes you may not know how you could do that. So I'm going to share my screen, and Addie, hopefully give me a thumbs up if that's working. And okay, cool. So what this is showing, this is from a website that's speedtest.net, but you can just Google speed test and it'll show you what this is. And so this first number that's over here, this is your ping. And Doug mentioned that means the lower the better on that number, because that means your network is really responsive. If you have a low ping, that means it can give and receive data quickly. This next one here, this is your download speed. And so this is going to be mostly affected by like streaming videos or listening to music or other items like that. So I have just like Doug, I have 100 down that I'm paying for from my internet service provider. But when I'm connected via Wi-Fi, because I have some older Wi-Fi modems, they work great, but they only give me 40 down. So that's important to know. Like, just because you're paying for 100 doesn't mean it's always going to say 100. And so I think that's important to know. And then right here, this is the up speed. And so I'm paying for a 5 up speed and I'm getting 4.35. And this is the one, this up speed over here, this is really important. If you see this, like, look at how gross that drawing is. Anyway, if you see that up speed being like 1 or 2 or 3, like that's when it's going to be really hard to have a Zoom meeting or to really have any kind of data that's going out of your system. And so that's the biggest piece that I would watch out for. I've seen some customers with a CenturyLink connection, usually it's CenturyLink, and it's like they're getting like almost 1 as their up speed, and that's just too low. So that's how you would test that. Go to speedtest.net, and then that will show you what your speed actually is. And then it'll also tell you your service provider down here. But anyway, that's how you do that. Some people may not have known how to do that. So I just want to clarify that. And then let's see what else. I also wanted to just talk about a little bit about the settings on your Wi-Fi device. Like Doug said, 5 gigahertz is going to give you a faster connection speed, but the 2.4 on your Wi-Fi modem, that's going to give you better penetration through walls. And so usually you have a device that can do both, and so you can connect to either one. Sometimes when you do set up your Wi-Fi to just be 5 gigahertz, older devices may not be able to connect to those, and so that's also a limitation. But anyway, I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about how to be secure while we're working at home, because that's now something that you no longer have your IT guy who you're able to just, you know, call or, you know, go to his desk and he's protecting your network. So now you have to do all of this stuff. And so how do you do that? So I want to talk about that real quick. So the first thing, and I have a PDF I could get to Addie and she can send it to you guys. But the first thing is that you are the person that can keep your network the most secure. So first thing is like, don't go to, you know, crazy websites that you've never been to. Don't click on links in emails that you're not expecting. Like just be cautious of what's coming into you. And so that's something that we call zero trust. So realize that if someone emails you, it could be someone from Nigeria or Russia, and they're just pretending to be, you know, Doug Cox or Jordan Smith or whatever. So you really don't know. So if someone emails you and says, hey, by the way, you won the lottery, like you probably didn't, like they wouldn't email you, and you would probably know. So just have low trust for emails and chats and voicemails and all those things that you're not expecting. The second thing that I want to talk about is your network. And we talked a little bit about some performance settings, but when you do have a network at your house, it's really important that you change your default username and password. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize. But normally the password is like admin and password. Like it's set up to be a really bad password. And so you need to change that. So go in and log into it. Usually on the side of your modem, it'll say what the IP address is that you need to log into. And then you can enter that password and change that password. So that is really important. And then when you set a password, don't just set another weak password. I would strongly suggest you use like a passphrase. So use a line to your favorite song. And another thing people don't realize is you can use spaces. A space is a special character. So you could just do a sentence that has spaces, and that's going to meet the complexity requirements of special symbols. And it's also really easy to type. So I'd definitely recommend using passphrases for that. And then another thing on your network is limit the access to your network to people you trust. So make sure that you have a password for your Wi-Fi that's not just welcome or, you know, electronics, or like there's a list, and I could show you the top 1 million passwords. And if your password is one of those, it takes less than like 10 minutes to crack your network. Like it's just super easy. So try to make it unique, make it a passphrase for your wireless. It doesn't have to be hard to type, just make it long. That's usually what makes it secure. So the next thing, so you have a lot of control, change some things on your network, and then also use a password manager. And I really recommend the password manager LastPass. It's really intuitive. I've also heard good things about Dashlane and 1Password. So, but Google a password manager. You can find like top 10 and just try them out. But the free version of LastPass is sufficient for anything that you would need. And so just try that out. And then also on all of your important accounts, if it's supported, you should turn on multi-factor authentication. And that's where they will send you a text message or you'll use a code after you've entered your password in order to get into those accounts. So that's what I'd recommend. And that's really important. It's also really easy to do. And then the next thing is make sure all of your devices are updated. So with Windows Update, make sure that those get updated. When your phone says, hey, by the way, we have a new update available, update those. The reason that those updates get created is because whoever made the software found that there was a weakness, and so they're fixing the weakness. So if you choose not to update, you're really running the risk of just keeping things insecure, and not a good idea. And then the last thing to keep in mind is just kids and guests. So if you're working in a space where you've got kids in the house or you have a lot of guests coming in, I would just recommend that you try to isolate your work, your work network, your work computer and printer, and try to keep, kids and guests away from those. One, to just make sure they don't get broke. Like my kids would break it, they wouldn't be able to get into it. But then you might have a guest that, maybe gets their eyes too big and wants to walk away with something. But anyway, those are the kind of key things in staying secure on your home network. And then I will pass it to Jordan Smith.
Go ahead, Jordan.
All right. Didn't switch to me on my screen, so I wasn't sure. Hey, thanks, Harrison. Thanks for that. Awesome security tips. And also thanks to the Ben Chamber for hosting this event, and super stoked to be able to help any way we can and just have a discussion, especially in the latter half of this hour, with you guys about some of the various things you're running into. So Doug's gone over some awesome insight into internet. Who here's, first of all, a quick Zoom test. Who here knows how to use the hand raise button on their participant panel? There's a couple. There we go. Awesome. So some people know how to use the hand raise. That's great. If not, go to your participants button at the bottom of your screen, and you should see your hand raise button at the bottom of that list. To Doug's point, who here has found they had to upgrade their internet in the last month and a half? Anybody call their internet provider, upgraded their internet? A few people. I know I have. And you guys are working remotely. How many people are, kind of to Harrison's point, how many of you guys are saving files to your computer now that you're not at work and you don't have a server or something else to save them to? And you're like, I just got to take care of this. I got to save it to my computer. Yeah, a lot of people, you're saving it to your own computer. And if it's your home computer, you're, not to say anything about your own security, but your company doesn't have their antivirus on that computer. Your company doesn't have their firewall on that computer. And your company doesn't have, their IT guys watching that computer. So it is, to Harrison's point, it's a place where people can, either through viruses or guests coming in and looking on your computer, they can get access to some sensitive information. So just be mindful of what you are storing on your local computer, especially if it's behind a weak network or a weak password. And a lot of times we save stuff to our local computer because our internet's not fast enough. So if that's the case, call Doug and he can help you out, I'm sure. So let me ask this, another raise of hands. Who here finds that they need to lead people at their work? They have a team that they lead or other employees that they lead. Yeah, there's quite a few of us, right? And that's something that is a challenge when we're all working remotely, and used to be, frankly, impossible. But now that we've got telecommunications and the internet and chat systems and all these other things, there's actually ways that we can lead people. Is anybody finding it more difficult to lead people from home than when they were in the office together? A few of us. So the rest of you are preferring to work from home and not see the other people you have to lead. Is that right? So beyond the kind of the technical pieces, there's that issue, there's that aspect of just operating in your company and leading people and communicating and collaborating. And so I want to just kind of chat a little bit about what to think about when you're building tools to work from in a work from home environment. And for those of you that kind of have influence, you can begin having these conversations with your fellow teammates, or management at your company, or if you are the manager at your company, you can have conversations about these. If I can, like the kind of the most important thing I can say is get everything that you can web-based. So if you're, the way that you manage your clients isn't web-based, you're gonna have to log into a server somewhere over a slow connection to get that information. If your data, like your files, isn't web-based, isn't on something like OneDrive or Google Drive or something like that, you got to go into the office, or you have to transport it on a USB drive, or you have to VPN into your office to get that information somewhere. And so get everything you can web-based. We went to QuickBooks Online a couple of years ago because we used to be on QuickBooks Desktop, and probably everyone's using QuickBooks, especially if you're a small office, home office kind of environment. And it's just a total headache to use QuickBooks for desktop. You go to QuickBooks Online, and it's like, I can get to it from everywhere. And I can send a link to my accountant, and they can get to it from anywhere. And, a lot of the online web-based applications are either doing a really good job or have done a really good job of keeping those things secure so that you know who's accessing what on the internet, be it through Microsoft or Google or, QuickBooks or whatever else, Salesforce, those kinds of things. So if you're working on something now that's not web-based, figure out a way to get it into a web page, whether that's moving to a different provider that has a web application or finding the web-based alternative to your current product like QuickBooks. Getting your data into a shareable space like Google Drive, OneDrive, there's Dropbox, Box.com, there's a lot of options out there. Make sure they're secure and make sure you know how they're secure. But Google and Microsoft probably do the best job, and it probably integrates with your email platform that you're already using. So I would go that route, and it's easy to share files out to people, and it's easy to pull those files back so they can't see them anymore whenever, maybe your marketing provider is done with the project or something like that. Chat system. How many people have come to rely on chat systems in the last couple of months? Google Hangouts and Teams and whatever else, Apple Chat. Man, I walked into a client of ours. They were a law firm, and I walked in to see one of the partners, and I see the guy at the front desk, and I was like, "Hey, I'm here to see so-and-so," and she's like, "Oh yeah, hold on, let me see if he's available." And she gets up and she walks away, and she goes back to his office to see if he's available, and I'm like, odd. And then just a few weeks later, luckily before this whole thing blew up, we implemented Teams, Microsoft Teams as a chat system. So if you don't have that, if you're not using that, if your business, if you're still doing all your communication through email, man, get something where you can just chat people quick. You can start calls. You can do audio calls, video calls. You can share your screen. You can have meetings. You can schedule all of that through a chat platform like Teams. Microsoft Teams is a good one, or Google. Finally, another piece is again, that idea of saving files to your local computer. There's ways that you can actually rent computers, or you can lease computer space out there on the internet. So Amazon has one such product, which I'm just going to share my screen real quick to kind of show you guys how it looks. So right here, if you can see my screen. Yeah. Oh, I have to hit the share button. There we go. You guys see my screen here? So this is like Windows inside of Windows, right? So I use a Windows 10 desktop myself, but then within that you can log into like Amazon's computer, and this is mine. Like everything in here is mine. I got my own applications. I have my own browser. I have my own file tree, which I can share like with network drives with other people in the company. So you can set these sorts of things up. And so if you're concerned about security and file security within your company, cloud computing is a pretty cool thing now that's pretty easy to set up, pretty easy to use and extremely secure. And if somebody leaves your company, you can just turn it off and they can't get into it anymore. And if somebody new starts, you just turn one on. You're not buying a computer. They log in with their own computer to do that, and you can get in there from anywhere. And so remote computing, it's called infrastructure as a service. There's a couple of providers that do that. Microsoft offers it, as well as Amazon. And then I had a few things on security too, but Harrison kind of talked about that. I will emphasize that two-factor authentication. As you put everything on the internet, as you make everything available remotely and online, making sure that when you're logging in with your computer and you also have to log in with your phone, that two-factor authentication is extremely important in keeping all of this stuff secure. And the biggest thing I've been saying over all of this is don't just solve the problems short term. Like all these solutions we're talking about, solve them long term, because this is very well going to change the culture of your workplace. The fact that we've all been working remotely, and those of us that can work remotely, that are kind of knowledge workers in that industry, and you've been doing it for 2 months, we're gonna be doing it for 3 months, like that changes everything when we all go back to work. The flexibility, the ability for dual income families with moms that have kids and dads that are staying home with their kids, you know, over the summer, and as school is in and out of service, like all of those things are going to impact the way that we look at work and working remotely. So don't just try and fix things quick, because we're only going to have to do it for a few months until the pandemic's over. Look at these solutions as things that can really change the way that your business works, the way that you do business, the way that you communicate with people, and the way that you lead people. So anyway, in closing here, I want to provide a few things. I got a really cool just kind of video series on working remotely, and some ideas to do that, both in leadership and operations and technology. If I can chat that here, I'll send that. I'll put that on the chat once I'm done, because I can't talk and chat at the same time. But there's a link by a guy that his name's Jeremy Kubicek, and he leads a company called Giant. And you know, he says on the phone, people ask him all the time where he's based out of, and he's like, "Oh, I'm based out of my cell phone. Like I'm based out of here. We don't have a you know, an office. They're all completely remote." And so he has a really good series of videos that talk about leading a company and running a company remotely, which I'll post online. And finally, just know, if you do feel like you're struggling working remote, you're not alone. Everybody is in the same boat. I've heard it say that this is a great time to be like 90%, because everyone's kind of okay with just a little bit of trouble and a little bit of delay and a little bit of, you know, kind of working around of problems. And so don't feel like you have to have it 100% all figured out today, but do look at the people who are doing it and doing it well. So hopefully that's helpful, and we'll go on to, I think, questions next here. So I'll hand it back to Addie. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jordan. I really liked your ending there. That was really great. Really good reminder that solving, because I'm always solving my tech problems short term. How do I just get this project done? I'm always saving files on my computer, and it's becoming a problem for sure. That was really good advice. And I just wanted to say to everyone that any links that were mentioned, they have been in the chat, but I will also send in a follow-up email after this. So you'll have access to this recording for all this information, and then also all the links that have been mentioned. And I think Harrison mentioned a PDF, so don't worry, we'll get that all sent out. We do have some questions. If anyone has questions now that are specific, or not specific, I guess, but things that you're dealing with, go ahead and put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We've got a few coming in, and I have some of my own I'm going to ask too. So if you don't want me to ask all the questions, better jump in and put your questions in the Q&A. So we've got one from Rebecca that says, how urgent is it to upgrade to Windows 10 if she's still on 7? Does it present a security issue to stay with 7? Jordan, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. And Harrison mentioned this as well. So Microsoft continues to come out with realizations on holes in the security of their operating system, where you can be more susceptible to viruses or malware or just attacks in general. And as they solve those, they solve them with patches that come out. And Windows 7 hasn't gotten a security patch since the end of January. So it is unsecure. it is urgent, and it's becoming more urgent as time goes on, to upgrade to Windows 10. They've done a pretty good job. I'm not going to totally testify for Microsoft, but they've done a pretty good job of making that seamless. I haven't run into a lot of problems upgrading from Windows 7 to Windows 10. They happen. But we've upgraded like 1,200 computers in the last year, and maybe 9–10% have an issue where it's impossible or really hard to upgrade, and you just have to totally wipe everything and reinstall it.
Harrison, did you have a comment on that too?
Yeah, I would just want to say, well, yeah, like Jordan said, like it's a big deal, and it's becoming a worse deal. But I'm going to share a link where you can do it for free. So this is the Microsoft Windows Media Creation Tool, and you can just download it on your Windows 7 machine, run it, and it works about 75% of the time, and it will just upgrade your computer for no cost. So Microsoft has just made that available, which I think is a really good idea. And Windows 7 has, like, not only is it not getting updated, but it also has like critical foundational security flaws that were one of the reasons they moved away from it. So absolutely, you need to get off Windows 7. And yeah, so use that link. Oh, so they wanted me to clarify, yes, your computer, in order for that link to work, your computer does have to have a valid original equipment manufacturing Windows 7 license. So if you got Windows 7 from some random place, that link's not going to work.
Good to know. Thanks, guys. That's really helpful. And we have a question from Talina. Using VPN seems to cause conflicts with my home computer. Any common issues I should explore? I'm using Box personally, but my team does not.
Yeah, so I can take a stab at that. So first of all, the question is like, what is a VPN and how does it work? So a VPN, you should think of a VPN as like a tunnel that you send your data through. And so it kind of masks your data and it connects somewhere. So it depends on where your VPN is going. Talina, I'm guessing that your VPN is going back to your office. And there's quite a few settings on a VPN that could make some things wonky with your computer. So kind of hard to answer that specifically, but yeah, you could be, I would try uninstalling it and reinstalling it to see if that fixes it. But there could also be some configuration issues that are causing challenges.
Doug, did you have something on that?
Yeah, I would work with your IT consultant as well too. It could be an IP address issue from the residents. We've seen that from time to time where people have dynamic IP addresses. It changes, or it's simply the static or reserved IP address information is not set up correctly. So again, I would work with your IT consultant in exploring that avenue as well too.
Blaine, I'll put in a ticket for you.
Yes.
That's great. Thanks, guys. All right, we have another one from Rebecca. Do you have recommendations for secure options for folks to upload documents to us with confidential/sensitive data, like personal info, not HIPAA level, but that type of concept?
Yes, absolutely. So there are options available. The ones that I'm thinking of are not like super easy to implement. And so, but it depends on what you need to do with that data and how you need to, basically you need to provide a way that people can, encrypt their document and give it to you and make sure that it's only readable by you. If you are on a platform like Microsoft 365, they have additional security that your IT guy could deploy to make those documents locked down and secure so that only the people who need access to those get access to them. So as far as the uploading of those documents, you could even use something like Dropbox where as long as that upload is encrypted and the user is setting up multi-factor authentication, Dropbox can work. But it's all in the configuration, and that's where you could get into trouble configuring it poorly, or you could do it right and configure it well. So.
Great, thank you. Doug, did you have a comment on that as well?
No, I do not. Harrison hit the nail on the head there. Yeah.
Great. Jordan?
Yeah, just reiterating, OneDrive, Dropbox would work, Google Drive, all those have the ability to share those files out to specific people, and in a way where they can only see it for the amount of time that you want them to, and how much, and limiting their ability to share with other people, and all of that is available in all of those options.
Great. So I have a couple questions as well. Back to the beginning, Doug, you were talking about 2.4 gigs versus 5.0 on your wireless. How would you change that if you wanted to go to a different option?
Like most people, when I set up my wireless router at home, I threw the box and the instructions away, right? I just, plugged it in, here we go, got the password set up, and we're off and running. I would recommend looking up, the manufacturer of the wireless router that you have, the model number. YouTube University is that's my go-to. So yeah, the internet's your friend. Just look it up. You'll have instructions and information on how to get into that with your laptop or even your mobile device to change the settings. But I recommend, and it varies on kind of what your home settings like, right? So if you live, let's take an apartment complex, just real quick here. Let's say you live in an apartment complex. You want to be cognizant of the other wireless devices that are in and around you. So making sure you have a wireless router that you can kind of have control over and set frequencies to, so you avoid interference. We see that a lot. Even in your single family home settings, wireless technology has gotten better. So there's still interference with the neighbors. So again, research what frequency you're on, what you can set it to avoid interference issues with your neighbors. We see those conflicts often, even in office settings too. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Harrison?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that wireless can be really finicky. And so we have my some family friends of mine, they were having trouble with their wireless, and they had set up their wireless device next to their where all the electrical came into their whole apartment complex, and that was throwing off the wireless signal. So there's a lot of things that can throw it off. It could be if you're using your microwave, you'll probably notice a significant drop in your signal and your throughput. Microwave is a big deal. So there are a lot of things, electronics, that can throw off your signal. So you might have to just try being a crazy mad scientist and try putting it here and see how that works. Try putting it over here, see if that works, and just experiment, because that's all that your IT guy would do. If at some point, he might be able to help some other things, but if it's actually wireless interference, you just got to play around with some things.
Right. We have kind of a follow-up question on the question that I asked. If my router shows both 2.4 and 5 as options, right, does it automatically choose which frequency it should run on depending on what activities are going on? Does it switch back and forth? Or is that something that depends on the device that you have?
Most typically they're set to 2.4 by default. So you'd have to go in and change it to 5. And like most of us, I have a smart TV at home. I'm streaming content on wirelessly to multiple televisions and other devices. So keep in mind, just for the home user, switch it to 5. You're going to have a better user experience.
That's great. Perfect. I have another question, and this is for Harrison. When you were showing us the speed test, box. You were talking about the most important thing is the upload speed at the end there. But what do you do about that? Let's say some of our people go on and they check it out and they have one. They have the polling at 1 or something terrible. What do you do about that? Is that something you call BendTel for? Is it something you call an IT person for? Or is there things you can do yourself to boost that? Like, what are the steps there?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing is to understand what you've contracted with your ISP for. So like in my situation, if I was getting 1 as my upload speed, well, I know that I've contracted with Ben Broadband for 5. So I'm clearly not getting that. So if that was the case, then I might call them and be like, hey, I'm supposed to be getting, 5, but I'm not. And just also a point of clarification, this is interesting, you never actually get the full 5. So there's always it's going to be lower. And I would say like, if it's below 75% of what you've contracted, that's when I would call them. But that's a good number. Like you should be getting 75% of what you've actually paid for.
I'm glad you clarified that because Doug was about to get a lot of calls after this.
Yeah.
I don't have
All the
5.
time.
Yeah. And so if you are supposed to be getting more of a speed, then it's probably your local network that is limiting that. It is possible it could be your internet provider that's limiting it, but yeah, if it's like, it could be, we had a gal last week and she was paying for 300 down and she was only getting 10 down. And so one thing you could do, always do this, plug in your computer. That is the best way to test what you're actually getting. Plug in your computer to your Ethernet, which is the little like square box that plugs into your modem, and then do a speed test from that. And that'll tell you what you're actually getting and whether or not it's your wireless interference. But there's a lot of things, but I would start with your internet and make sure that you're paying for a higher speed before you go try to fix something else.
And one thing to note on that, most internet providers, unless you have what we call fiber, right? If you have fiber, you have more of a dedicated internet connection. Internet providers are going to guarantee that you're going to get those speeds. Ben Broadband and CenturyLink, they are best effort networks. Their cable network is best effort. CenturyLink's copper network is best effort, meaning up to speeds, right? You hear that all the time. So like Harrison was saying, you want to make sure you're getting at least 75% of the advertised speed that you had purchased. Because in most cases in best effort networks, you're not going to see 100%. You're not.
And kind of as a follow-up on that, how do you know when to call your ISP and when to call your IT guy? Just in general, what kind of are the best way to go about that when we're trying to solve a problem?
No, that's a good question. And I saw that on the message here. I would always recommend starting with your internet service provider, that's ISP. Hey, I know it's tough sometimes. You get on tech support or it takes you forever to get there. But usually they're going to diagnose things up front. They're going to say, hey, I see your modem online. I see we're getting you the speeds as advertised. Or the internet product that you've purchased is working, you're up. Like in our case, we'll troubleshoot that. And then usually if it's not on our side, we recommend then the next step is get a hold of your IT consultant and have them troubleshoot and diagnose the network. But start with your internet service provider first is my recommendation.
Perfect. Thank you. I want to go back a little bit to, I think Harrison touched on this, but if anyone has something for this, when we had the question about VPNs, when do you need one? Do we all need to get one? What does that look like?
Yeah, I'll take that. So VPNs, they're usually talked about in one of two ways. If you're talking about your business, a VPN will connect you back to the office so you can securely communicate with file shares or applications that you're used to using while you're at your office. So if you have that set up, if you have that situation, like you need to get onto your company QuickBooks, and it's not QuickBooks Online, but it's QuickBooks Desktop, or you need to get on your company, CRM software, whatever that is, or you just need to look at documents that you share as a company, your Word documents, memos, Excel files, inventory lists, things like that. To get that information that's always stored at your business location, you would need a VPN into your office to be able to get to that from your computer. So that's one type of VPN. The other type of VPN is one, if you think like you're working at a coffee shop or at some sort of third location, which no one's working at coffee shops right now, but hotels, things like that. That's a VPN that you can get to actually secure your internet traffic so that other people in the coffee shop, maybe there's some high school kid who just finished his computer science class and wants to try and hack into people's traffic. They can see what you're browsing. They can see what passwords you're typing in and those sorts of things through your internet traffic by like sniffing the Wi-Fi, unless you have a program on your computer that is enforcing all of your internet traffic to be encrypted over a VPN. And so if you travel a lot or if you work remotely a lot and you have a lot of sensitive information, I would recommend looking into getting a personal VPN that secures all your traffic. But the VPN we've been predominantly talking about today would be just accessing information on your business network. And that's kind of calling home into your office and then accessing the network things there that you're used to getting while you're on site.
Great. Thank you. We've got a question here for Doug. Does BendTel provide residential and home internet services?
Oh gosh, if I had a nickel for every time we got asked that question, I'd probably be somewhere tropical right now. That's a good question. We're getting ready to dip our toes in the residential market. It's going to be a very targeted effort. We're not at the capacity or the capability to deliver a residential service to every home in Bend. Our network is our fiber network. It's fairly decent size, I guess, for Bend, but we're not able to reach everybody. So where am I going with this? We're getting ready to launch our residential product here next Monday. So if you guys, call us up. Let's qualify the address. Let's see if you're on our footprint. It's going to be fiber to the home, speeds up to a gig. And that's guaranteed speeds up to a gig. So this isn't a best effort, hope we get there kind of thing. So we're excited about it. But it's going to be, we're going to be able to touch a very limited portion of the market for now. But we have future growth plans to build into Redmond and even into Prineville. So we're really excited about that. So more to come. Always continue to check in with us. Just because we may not be there today, a couple months down the road we could be. So
that's really exciting. It's exciting news. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have another, I love this question. We have one more question here. We'll be wrapping up here in a minute, but if you're afraid of sounding dumb to your IT guy or to Doug, which clearly these are all such nice guys, but how can you avoid that and ask a good question? And that's great because I know that sometimes some don't even know what to ask.
And most people don't be afraid. Just tell them what you're experiencing. You would be surprised. I mean, yeah, we geek out on this stuff because we know it, but if you ask me to, write code or rebuild a transmission, I'll be the first one to tell you I can't do it. But we get questions like this all the time. People are afraid to ask. It's intimidating. They don't want to look stupid, but trust me, not everybody geeks out on this like we do. So no, you're not the only one.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, like find a new IT guy because that's just rude. And the IT industry even has that like reputation for making people feel bad. And so I would just hopefully we can start to change that. I know that Jordan and Doug, and like we really try to work to make sure people understand what we're saying and we don't humiliate them. But that's not always the case. So I would just not stand for it. If it's somebody that you would hire, like just fire them. And then, and then sometimes you do have to call the ISP that is in town and they have, a call center, and you never know. But if they make you feel bad, like, just, try to tell them what you've done. I would say that's important. Like, here, these are the things I've already tried. I've restarted the modem already. I've restarted my computer. That will, tell them what you've done, and that should help them to answer better.
Thank you. Along those same lines, I think one of my last questions, or the last question today, is we're all probably in different situations now. So we used to work in an office. We may or may not, as an office, have had an IT person on call, or an IT company that we subscribe to. If you're now working from home and you're having tech problems, but your company doesn't really have a good way to handle that, what can you do? What kind of resources can you access on your own? Is that something that we would call New Fathom for?
Yeah, you could. I like what Doug was saying, that you can call your ISP first. The nice thing about that is, like, you're already paying for that service. So call them, they'll do the initial troubleshooting. And then if it is something wonky, you could, we don't serve residential, so we would be actually working for the business. But there are guys like Paul, the computer guy. He does residential work. But I think Google is going to be your friend. And I would, the only way you can learn is by trying to figure it out yourself. So try YouTube, and if you get really stuck, then do a hard reset on the modem. So.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. Definitely leverage your ISP, leverage your company's IT provider if you can. We've helped a gazillion people. I don't know if that's an accurate number, but a lot of people working remotely that are users for our client, for the companies that we manage, their employees and staff that need to work from home. So definitely do that. Otherwise, I think Google, brother-in-law, if he's nice, Paul, the computer guy, who I hear is nice. All of those are good resources around town.
That's great. Thank you so much, all three of you, for being here today. We're really thankful for you. This was great. I think we answered a lot of questions. I know I learned a lot and took a lot of notes. So thank you for that. We're just going to wrap it up here. Just a couple chamber shout outs right now at 1 in like 2 minutes at bendsos.com. They're having a launch party. So bendsos.com is going to be a really great place to invest in companies for the future, our local companies. So there's a bunch of local companies that are on this website. You can purchase things from them now, even though things are kind of closed. So if you want to be a part of that party, it's happening in a couple minutes over on bendsos.com. And we can throw that in the links. And we also have another Impact webinar series coming up on Thursday. This is going to be about opening. So we're going to hear from the governor's office in Deschutes County about just more information on how we're going to start opening and what that looks like. So that's going to be a great resource. So thanks again to Jordan, Doug, and Harrison. I really thank you for being here today. And I'm going to send a follow-up email as well. So with all these links. sosben.com, yeah, don't forget. Okay, we put it in there. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.